Hi, it's Dwyer, GamblersAdvisory.com, DwyerBoxingNews.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, I've had a long afternoon. I'm back from court on a case where I already won a trial on a TRO for a client who's going up against Silicon Valley exec. Now, of course, we're fighting over division of the other side's bonus and issues like that. So I've been immersed in wonk land all day. So this is how I let off steam, by thinking about sports, American football, and boxing. Let's talk about what happened in that Andre Ward demolition of Chad Dawson. Let me just say first to my core crowd, the gamblers, you should have been taken care of here because the over 9.5 hit. I know it barely hit, but it hit. You made it past the halfway point of the 10th round, right? So whether you bet on Ward, who I said I thought would win, or whether you roll the dice with me and bet on Dawson, my recommended play, to get a taste of the plus 250, your play should have been hedged. Okay, you should be okay today. Let's talk about Chad Dawson first. I'm going to disagree with all the pundits here online who've been saying that Chad Dawson has chin problems, may have been knocked down sparring against Edison Miranda or somebody else, that Dawson's overrated, that Dawson has stamina problems. Let me just say, Chad Dawson remains, in my opinion, in the top 5 in the sport, pound for pound. The only other guys I have in the top 5 are Andre Ward, Floyd Mayweather, Sergio Martinez, and Timothy Bradley. Right? Before we hop off the Dawson bandwagon, just consider the other champions at 175 pounds. And understand, Dawson is still the champ at 175. His belt was not at risk in this fight fought at 168. Understand, Tavares Cloud has already lost to a slick southpaw who knows how to move and operate behind a jab in Gabriel Campillo. I know the judges saw it differently, but anyone with 2 eyes could tell that Campillo gave Cloud all he can handle. I believe Dawson beats Tavares Cloud. I believe that Campillo fight is the blueprint. Dawson against Beibut Shumenov. Well, understand, it's questionable whether Shumenov has ever beaten Gabriel Campillo. Right? Campillo is the guy who Shumenov presumably beat to get the title. But if you look at the tape, you're going to see that Shumenov himself had all kinds of problems with Gabriel Campillo. I believe Dawson beat Shumenov. I don't consider Nathan Cleverly to be in the class of a Chad Dawson, right? Cleverly gives away height, doesn't quite move well enough. I don't think he's the technician who could do things that Andre Ward did. Finally, Jean Pascal, I'll throw him in, another elite light heavy. All I can say is, at the end of the first Pascal fight, I thought Pascal was dead on his feet. I thought he was on the verge of getting knocked out. And in my opinion, ambush fighters do better in first fights than rematches. Just compare and contrast Pascal's performance against Bernard Hopkins the first time around to Pascal's performance against Bernard Hopkins the second time around. Let me also say this too, and I don't say it lightly. Andre Ward, the king at 168 pounds, I have little doubt that he beats Jean Pascal because Ward is Bernard Hopkins plus, right? He has the moves of Bernard Hopkins, the intelligence, only he's younger, so he has a bit more stamina, doesn't have to take rounds off, right? I believe because Pascal's already lost to Hopkins, and because Andre Ward is the kind of guy who looks like he can break down tape and figure out blueprints, I believe Andre Ward would beat Jean Pascal. Well, let's talk about what happened in this fight. And I believe it's very important. I believe this is a tape that you need to save. Now, we talk about fighting inside, right? I've said here many times that there are very few guys in boxing who can fight inside. And that, in my opinion, some of the biggest names in the sport, Vladimir Klitschko, for example, David Haye, for example, can't fight inside, right? Andre Ward, quite frankly, was able to literally dominate a few guys in that Super 6 contest simply by beating them up inside, right? I believe he dominated Alan Green, for example, by beating him up inside. Let me just say this. If you have a tornado, as destructive as that tornado is on the outside, ripping up homes and communities, if you get inside a tornado, there's calm, right? The winds are circling you, but inside, there's calm. Well, let me just say, in boxing, if you're fighting a guy who's great outside, he's like a tornado. If you can get inside, and if you know how to operate inside, then you're literally in that other guy's calm zone. You can operate, and the other guy really can't do much about it. Now, let me say this. I'm going to disagree with one of my favorite fighters ever, Bernard Hopkins. Before this fight, Bernard Hopkins, in an interview with BoxingScene.com, said that in his opinion, Chad Dawson, who he fought twice, couldn't fight inside. I believe Chad Dawson can, especially for a big guy, right? Dawson's like 6'2". I just don't believe Dawson can fight inside as well as Andre Ward. Andre Ward had a decided advantage inside. Boxing's like a chain. If a guy can break your weakest link, he can break your chain. Chad Dawson is actually competent inside. He's just not on Ward's level inside. Had the fight been fought outside, I think that Andre Ward would have been in trouble. But he was able to fight the fight inside. Now, what I'm going to do, let's get wonkish, is I'm going to track the tape. This fight is actually up on YouTube. What I want to do is direct everyone's attention to the second round. The early parts of fights are always more interesting because you can see the guys who are figuring out their opponents. And you could see them learn their opponents a step at a time. I believe in this fight, that's exactly what happened. Let's go to 30 seconds into the second round. About 2:30 is left on the clock in the second round. You're going to see that Andre Ward, who I still believe is a converted southpaw, right? I believe his left hand is his power hand. We can discuss it. But he's fighting Chad Dawson, himself a converted southpaw, fighting out of a southpaw stance, right? So understand, Dawson's lead hand, his jab hand, is his right hand. And what you're going to see is 30 seconds into the second round, when Ward is still trying to figure out Chad Dawson, he's able to come forward and grab Dawson's lead right hand, just like Bernard Hopkins did. Right? Bernard Hopkins, as I said in an earlier tape, really set the blueprint on how to fight Chad Dawson. I thought Hopkins won at least 4 rounds against Chad Dawson. Ward comes in, he's able to grab Dawson's lead right hand. He's figuring out how to get into the eye of the tornado. Right? He's figuring out how to get inside on Chad Dawson. Well, let me say this too. 7 seconds are left in the round. Dawson gets upset, tries to move forward, and again, Andre Ward is able to grab his hand. Now let me say this, and it's a secret, I believe, to fighting Andre Ward. Chad Dawson should not allow anyone to be able to grab his lead hand on demand. If you throw a jab, you need to bring it back quickly. You can't have the punch linger. You can't have guys who know how to fight inside grabbing your hand. That leaves you open. It gives them a chance to come inside. They've already neutralized your lead jab. It leaves you open. Ward, in my opinion, at that moment, second round, is auditioning a more aggressive game. In other words, he's figuring out how to come over Chad Dawson's lead right hand. He has Dawson's hand timed to the point where he can just come in and grab the hand. Well, let me just say this. Third round starts. 2:05 left in the round. Right? You can look on the timer. You can track what I'm saying. Dawson comes forward to get Ward on the ropes. Dawson obviously sees Ward, the shorter man, as the smaller man. He wants to walk down Andre Ward. Importantly, Andre Ward, even with Dawson coming forward, is able to neutralize Dawson's right jab by knocking it down. With 1:38 left, Dawson again comes inside and is able to grab Chad Dawson. With 1:28, Dawson is so frustrated with getting grabbed. He's so frustrated with Andre Ward's ability to just come on his right side and just grab him that he starts to give up his height. He needs to have Ward stop coming inside and grabbing him. So what he does is he leans forward and he crouches down. And Andre Ward responds by coming over Dawson's right hand and by putting him in a headlock. Now that's troubling. He has Dawson timed to the point where he can ignore Dawson's lead right, and he's coming over it enough to literally just put Dawson in a headlock. Dawson, who knows what's going on, Dawson's one of the smarter fighters out there, retaliates by putting Ward in a headlock a few minutes later. Incredibly, we're talking the third round. I encourage everyone to watch it. Incredibly, with 53 seconds left in the round, Ward comes back and puts Dawson in another headlock. The key is this. How's Ward able to put Dawson in a headlock? Ward's left, his lead left, which I consider his dominant hand. He's literally able to just place that left over the taller man's right and just swing it around to get him in a headlock. Right? In other words, he knows where Dawson's right hand's going to be, and even though he's shorter, he's able to come on top of it. That's the secret to the fight. With 43 seconds left in the third round, Ward completes the play. He throws a right hand to Dawson's body, his midsection. Dawson blocks it, literally pulls his hands down to block it. You know Ward's next move. Ward throws the left hook right over Dawson's right shoulder, hits him, drops him. Right? Dawson hits the canvas. Dawson has been solved. Let me say this too. When he gets up, rather than try to keep Ward underneath his right hand, rather than use his height, lean back, pull a Vitali, and make sure nothing gets over his right hand, right? Leverage your height against a guy trying to come over your shoulder. Rather than do that, Dawson tries to retaliate. He tries to go low. That leads to, in my opinion, the best moment of the round, right? 8 seconds left in the round. I want everyone to look at this moment. This is what high-level guys do. Roberto Duran, Floyd Mayweather. Understand, if you're going to fight inside, you're going to have to get a little outside the rules, right? Ward, 8 seconds left. As he comes forward, again gets over Dawson's lead right. Ward again gets over. That's the key part of the fight. That's the angle. Ward gets over Dawson's lead right and gets off 2 elbows. Not punches. 2 elbows aimed at Dawson's face. Right? Now Dawson's able to back away. But understand, Ward is so close to Dawson that Ward's not only getting punches over Dawson's right shoulder. Now Ward is getting elbows over the shoulder. Now let me say this. The rest of the round, we're just talking about the last few seconds of the third round. The rest of the round is brilliant because as Ward tries to come forward, Dawson then decides he's going to try to come forward. First, Dawson throws some left hooks. Ward blocks them with his right hand, right? In other words, Ward's not just coming in throwing elbows. Ward has a defensive construct behind the elbows. As I said, this is high-level stuff. Ward blocks Dawson's left hooks with his right hand. Now, importantly, even though Chad Dawson is right up on him, Ward does not go into a shell. Instead, he puts the same right hand on the right side of Dawson's head, pushing him away. It's not a punch, it's a push, right? Ward on the inside is so skilled. I know it's outside the rules, but he's dealing with elbows and pushes. Let me say this too. Dawson throws a hard right hand. Ward smothers it. Now the way he smothers it, again, high level. This is high level defense without going into a rabbit ear shell. The way Ward smothers it, this is all in the last 8 seconds of the third round, is he puts his left glove behind Dawson's right shoulder and pulls Dawson toward him, making it impossible for Dawson to get leverage. This is playing the angles at the absolute best. Now let me say this. Fourth round starts. Third round ends. Fourth round starts. Early. What does Ward do? He again comes over Dawson's right shoulder early, and Dawson goes down again. Right? This fight was defined by Ward coming over Dawson's right and Dawson unable to make adjustments. Right? Let me just say, Dawson needs to figure out when he's dealing with, whether it's a Hopkins or a Ward, he needs to figure out how to prevent the opponent from coming over his lead right shoulder. Right? Andre Ward goes to town with a bevy of left hooks for most of the fight. Andre Ward's left has enough power to knock down Chad Dawson multiple times in a fight, right? Not surprisingly, the Ward people now want to fight Joe Calzaghe, who's also a southpaw. My advice to Joe Calzaghe, who struggled to beat Bernard Hopkins, is to stay away from the game. Be a fan. You don't need it for your legacy. Every fighter outside the ring thinks they can come back and be in their prime I'll tell you what, if I'm Joe Calzaghe, I realize that I like to come in square. I get by on hand speed and a two-handed attack. You cannot come in square on Andre Ward, right? Ward is a great fighter. We're going to have to start to think about Ward as not just on the pound-per-pound list today, not just the best at 168 today. We're going to have to really start asking the harder question of, is he the best at 168 for all time? Because if you think about 168, the high watermark, I would argue, would be Joe Calzaghe. And quite frankly, the way Andre Ward dissected Southpaw Chad Dawson, I think Joe Calzaghe would be, simply put, in over his head. It's one thing for these old timers, whether it's Lennox Lewis or Joe Calzaghe, to talk a lot of good smack and trash talk from the sidelines. All I can say is neither guy today should enter the ring, right? The ring rust, quite frankly, would be too much. More importantly, Andre Ward has figured out the angles on a southpaw. As it was, Joe Calzaghe went down against both Bernard Hopkins and Roy Jones, right? He was toward the end of his career. I just think against Andre Ward, it's an open question whether Calzaghe, even in his prime, would be able to beat Andre Ward. Let's just say I consider Andre Ward, who beat Mikael Kessler, right? And that's one of Calzaghe's biggest wins. I consider Andre Ward to be much more advanced than Mikael Kessler. Let me also say this too. One of the secrets to Andre Ward is superior foot movement, right? Andre Ward, quite frankly, is better on the outside than most fighters. The only reason I would give Chad Dawson the advantage on the outside is simply because it's Chad Dawson. And if Dawson gets a jab going, just look at CompuBox numbers on Dawson's other fights. If Dawson gets a jab going, it's usually over, right? Chad Dawson has beaten people like Tomas Ademic, like Antonio Tarver, the cruiserweight champion, right? Like Glenn Johnson when Glenn Johnson was a little younger, right? Chad Dawson, Adrian Diacanu. Chad Dawson has beaten world-class guys when he's fighting long. When you're outside, most can't deal with Chad Dawson. But understand, against an average opponent, or even a slightly above average opponent, Andre Ward would have the advantage not just inside, and Ward's one of the best, if not the best in the sport inside. He would have the advantage outside as well. Quite frankly, I know the Kessler people want you to believe that that Kessler-Ward fight was a headbutt fest. But if you look at that fight, you're going to see Andre Ward has his way with Mikael Kessler, whether he's outside or whether he's inside. And inside, he has few peers, right? Inside, I mean, there's him, there's Timothy Bradley. There really aren't a lot of other great fighters inside in the sport. So all I can say is, as you rewatch Ward Dawson, I just want you to count the ways Andre Ward is able to get left hooks over Dawson's right shoulder. That's the secret to the fight, right? Also, the way Ward's able to get aggressive with the hook and still have defense when Dawson tries to counter, right? Ward rarely gets hit flush in the fight. It's not just an offensive performance, it's a total performance. Let me hear from you. Leave your comments for me here online. When you watch a tape, if you disagree with me, if you see something else, a different dynamic that I haven't seen, you let me know. Let me just say this. The knockdown The referee comes over to Chad Dawson. Chad Dawson has only lost once up to that moment, and that loss was a bit questionable. That loss was a cut loss in a fight in which the other guy was dead tired. The Pascal fight, right? So Chad Dawson's only lost once in his life. The referee comes over to him. Now, I don't know what Dawson told the referee, but I can tell you, looking at the film, it looks to me like Chad Dawson understood he had just been undressed. It looks to me like Chad Dawson basically says to the referee, I'm done. This guy has beat me. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments for me here online. Visit us at gamblersadvisory.com if you want to know how to fight inside. The fighters to watch, in my opinion, are Andre Ward and Timothy Bradley. I have both of them in my top 5 pound for pound at Dwyer top10boxing.blogspot.com. Let me leave you with this. If Ward wants to fight a southpaw and wants the fight to be major, forget old man retired Joe Calzaghe. Fight the southpaw who I think wins this weekend's Sergio Martinez, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. fight. Fight Martinez gets interesting because Martinez fights at a side profile. And let me just say this, and you'll see this in the Purnell Oscar De La Hoya fight. The way to beat a guy who is trying to come over your shoulder, right, trying to hit you with left hooks, is to literally turn to the side like Pernell Whitaker did against De La Hoya, and then as he throws the left, have your head tucked, it's all an angle, and lean down. The punch will sail over the back of your head. Sergio Martinez can actually pull that off, given the angle at which he fights. I think a Martinez-Ward fight would be spectacular, and like Ward's fight against Chad Dawson, would feature 2 of the top 5 pound-for-pound fighters in the sport. Let me hear from you. Thanks for watching.